Adding foliage to games is a bit like growing a beard. If you can't grow a dense enough one, it may be better to get rid of it completely. Hello and welcome. Today I'll show you how I helped the large terrains in my game to swap this not quite cutting it patchy attempt out for a don't ever cut it full-bodied beard worthy of taking its place in the annals of history. In addition to being lush, there are a few extra requirements for our foliage. Firstly, the terrain elevation is dynamic and the entire map can be edited by the player. The foliage needs to adapt instantly to whatever happens on the terrain. Secondly, a hex grid of up to 160,000 hexes underlies the terrain, and each of these hexes has their own local climate parameters that can vary over time. The foliage also needs to be suitable given the dynamic local climate. Let's start with a short recap of where we are at this point. In a previous video, I covered how I combine all the meshes of all the flowers into a single mesh, storing the sub-ranges of vertices that make up each mesh for each flower. I also combine all the flower materials into a single material using texture arrays, with each vertex in the combined mesh also storing which index of the texture array it relates to. While this does mean I have to manage render calls manually, it allows me to perform the preparation work on multiple threads and render all instances of all flowers in a single indirect draw call using a single mesh and material, which speeds things up considerably. In another video, I covered how I also used burst compile parallel jobs to perform the culling of objects. By grouping small cosmetic objects into the hexes they exist on, I am able to cull millions of objects efficiently on multiple threads. For example, a large terrain containing flowers this dense requires about 3 million objects spread across the map. I only have to cull 160,000 groups or hexes, so even if we double the density, 6 million objects are still viable in terms of culling. However, each object or flower still needs to look up the culling result for its parent hex to determine whether it's visible to the camera and should be added to the render queue. To get the foliage truly dense enough, we may have to go well past 10 million objects, which starts becoming a problem, even for burst compiled jobs on multiple threads. So what can we do? Well, we could create the foliage in 2 steps. The first step is the one we already perform. We predetermine some special objects for each of the 160,000 hexes, which in this example gives us about 3 million objects on a large terrain. These are culled per hex, and there could typically be around 3,000 hexes visible and close enough to the camera at any time for their meshes to be rendered, depending on the camera view. The second step is to consider a smaller collection of hexes that are very close to the camera. This can be around 300 to 1,000 hexes depending on the quality settings. Now, rather than creating an extra 10 to 15 million dense foliage objects once off across the map and continuously culling them each frame, we create the dense foliage only for these 300 to 1,000 close-up hexes, but we recreate them every frame. As a bonus, we can slot this creation step in with a culling step that already runs on a burst compile job on parallel threads. When a hex is close enough to the camera, we run a set of rules that are based on the elevation and slope data per square grid point, as well as the climate data per hex, and each thread adds the objects it creates for the hexes it processes into a native parallel multi-hash map. When the job has been completed, we have a list of about 15 to 30,000 extra objects to render, which we prepare for rendering in another job and then send to the GPU in a single indirect render call. Our rules can include all kinds of data. For example, we prevent foliage when a grid point has a road going over it, or we favor ferns above grass when the hex contains trees. We can also let the foliage gradually scale in and out at the edge of the visible distance, so that there isn't a noticeable pop and it feels more continuous. Finally, an important consideration for foliage this dense is the number of triangles and complexity of the shader used to render the objects. It's important to use assets that have been properly optimized but still look good. For example, this grass pole created by the award-winning nature manufacturer looks really good, but uses only 26 triangles, and has a lot that looks almost as good with 16 triangles. This greatly increases the amount of foliage you can throw at the GPU before it starts struggling. And that's it for this video. Please subscribe to this channel, wishlist and follow Minor Deity on Steam, or join the Discord server to stay up to date. All the links are down below. Also, feel free to ask any specific questions you may have. Thanks for your time and support.